Hello and welcome to the Grand Campaign recap of Session 5. This video will be an overview of the important wars, events and developments that have occurred during the 5th session. We do have a change-up, however, as currently discussing the wars from a geographic standpoint no longer makes any sense, as most wars are now global, and saying that they occurred within one area would be a lie. As such, for the campaigns in their later stages, I will instead be adopting a chronological order for the recap instead. Remaining players, 16, 2 in the New World, 7 in Europe, 2 in Africa, and 5 in Asia. The first war of the session occurred somewhat early on. With the destruction of Spain repeatedly in the previous sessions, Portugal saw the right in the war, and formed Peru. This colonial exodus gave them a huge amount of development, however they really struggled through this transitional period, since this formation left them with a disorganised trade route, and a messed up country filled with rebels. Seeing their opportunity, Great Britain, with their ally the Dutch, declared war on them. They were able to begin with minimal real resistance, as the closest thing Peru had to an army at this point was very busy fighting rebels, and California, Peru's only ally, was in no real position to help either. Despite the loss, Peru then focused on rebuilding their country to ensure they could fight if there was a round 2. Peru and California, however, were not the only ones scared of European imperialism. The Dutch expansion to the Cape was tolerated initially, but they started funneling trade away from Matapa, and their previous wars made them an enemy in Morocco. This was further made worse for the Dutch since Malaya had some ambitions in the Cape personally, and was happy to promise not to touch the Zanzibar node if it was given the Cape as help for the war. As such, the second war of the session was the Moroccan, Matapa and Malayan pursued coalition against the Dutch and the British. France was defender of the faith, defending the Dutch, and while they had no real interest in defending the Dutch colonies, since they were at war with Morocco, they did take this as an opportunity to beat them up, something which was not part of the plan for this coalition, as they had assurance that the French player would stay out. As such, somewhat untrue to the word, the French did, however, withdraw later from the war after completely destroying Morocco as a country. Either way, this initial setback was not enough to deter the coalition, and despite being down a third of their alliance, they continued the war with the combined Matapa and Malayan forces, pushing into the Cape. The fighting was quite close, but eventually they were able to capture the Cape after destroying many a Dutch stack, as well as dozens of their mercenaries. The combined British and Dutch armies were unable to hold the Cape, forcing them to lose this war, and as such re-securing Matapan trade and expanding Malayan influence into the Cape of Good Hope. The next Player War after this had little to cover. The French-Moroccan truce expired and France went into Morocco in essence, to clean up what was left of the original anti-France coalition of the 4 players. At this point, Morocco's resistance was trivial, not due to lack of trying, but due to the complete power imbalance of the war. France won easily, although one must still commend the Moroccan player for continuing to play and not giving up. Moving on from that, we can see a war which actually involved extensive fighting. Great Britain, somewhat humiliated from their loss in the Cape, went in against Peru and California for round 2. However, this time Peru had time to build up their country, and with California's help they were able to turn back the initial British success, and start to advance into the British colonies. Britain eventually lost here too, and as such were forced to give up huge territories in North America to California, although due to their naval dominance they were to hold on to their gains in the Caribbean. Either way, for this session we have certainly saved the biggest for last. Going against the unofficial rule of don't start a major war at the end of the session, Russia, after being boxed in by the Ottomans and their former ally Yuan, declared war on them. Unlike the first time, this time Russia seemed much more prepared, and having an average so far equal manpower recovery to the Ottomans, and having 10% more discipline than them, meant that they could put up a serious fight, even if forced them otherwise they were outnumbered 2-1 almost. The first major battle here occurred in Ottoman territory, where both players reinforced well, and throughout the entire thing, both players held onto the full-back row artillery. This battle saw a grand total of 1.3 million dead, but in truth the manpower recovery reserves of both of these nations, excluding slack in recruitment, means that they both can afford to have a body count in the 7 digits easily, and 8 if they decide to death war this with slack in recruitment accounted for. Regardless, from the first win so far, the Ottomans are now on the offensive and are able to start getting some occupations. However, this is far from the end as Russia has millions to put on the front line and an economy to pay for it. Now also stands the perfect time to get involved for any other powers, as anyone from Delhi to France had their golden opportunity to be on the side of the Russians, but declaring their own separate wars, while Russia itself must be cautious of either Japan or Iran invading them, since they did decide to make a rather awkward border in Korea. Either way, next session should be very interesting in the purpose of finding out the outcome of this war. And with that, the Grand Campaign recap for Session 5 has come to an end. If you wish to watch the stream of the next session live, you can do so by turning up at 7pm GMT to 11pm GMT on Sunday every week until further notice. If you wish to join the Grand Campaign, you can find a link to do so in my channel description.